Hello, and welcome everybody to the January 19th, 2023 meeting of the Urban Forestry Committee. Pursuant to Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting will be held remotely, and we might have a re-examination of that policy. I think the governor will do that in May, but for now, this is how we do our meetings. And so I'd like to start out by doing introductions. And we are going to go in alphabetical order by first name, and the board will introduce themselves. Okay.
All right, I think that's me. I'm Chris Dwan. I am one of the co-chairs of this committee. I'm a local activist. I am very passionate about transparency and accountability and understanding the city's processes, and also about having a sustainable and green and environmentally sensible future here in Somerville. I think Jennifer Clifford, you might be alphabetically next.
I'm next, yes, thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody, welcome this evening. I'm Jennifer, and I am a resident of Somerville. I serve on the Urban Forestry Committee. I'm a plant pathologist by training. I'm also interested in the life cycle of perennial plants, trees, and otherwise. And I just want to do whatever I can to contribute to having a healthy, sustainable urban forest for our city. And I'm interested in having community involvement for that goal. Thank you.
I'm probably next. My name is Leah Grossman. I'm a landscape architect working in Boston, and I'm excited about really investigating our tough native plants that do well in the city. I'm also excited about mediating between designers, city organizations, other various city committees, and the public. So I'm excited to be here today.
Hi, I'm Murphy Langevin. I am an arborist in training at Essex Tech, and my goal is to help everybody with the youth involvement and get more people involved in the community aspect of the Urban Forestry Committee.
I'll go next since I'm listed as public space. I'm Vanessa Bukili, Senior Urban Forestry and Landscape Planner for the city, and interested in pretty much everything about trees and love plants, and focus a lot of my efforts on planting new trees in the city.
And I'm Tori Antonino. I am an ecological landscaper and consultant, and very much want to strive to use our public and private spaces to regenerate our ecosystem so that we can all be reconnected to nature and sort of live our best lives. And that's when we're in balance and we have lots of green space around us. And so at this time, well, let's first, we have any housekeeping items?
May I just, Tori, pardon me, I just got a text from Amy saying to let you all know she's on the bus and can't connect by phone, but will connect as soon as she can, so she is on her way. Thanks.
Thank you for that. We are all skittering to come to get to the meeting.
Also, Tori, Malik is here in Breck's stead. He wants to introduce himself.
Oh, Malik, hi.
Hello, and to give the intro, I guess, Malik Drayton, Urban Forestry and Landscape Planner. Interest involved tree protection and tree.
Thanks, Malik. Just as a point of order, is that sort of, so Malik can, is that where the ex officio comes in, where Malik or Breck are qualified? Are they members of the Urban Forestry Committee, or they can they sort of sub in for each other if one is missing?
So Breck is the official member as the tree warden, but the ordinance was written so that the ex officio members can sub out other people for quorum
Very good.
purposes primarily. So Breck had a last minute thing, and so designated Malik to come as his designee.
Okay, well, I'm very glad that is in place. And do we have any housekeeping?
I'm taking notes since Breck was up for that, so I'm swapping with him.
Okay, and if anyone wants to jot some things down when Vanessa's talking so we can get what she says accurately, I volunteer yourselves. Hey, I see my co-chair. Okay, so at this time, what we do in this committee is we promote those who are in the audience to become not present, part of the panel. That way we can, if you can speak, if you want to speak during designated times, and if you want to show your face, you can show your face. And so at this time, I would like to do that. And then what we're going to do is to go into resident concerns. So if there are residents here who want to speak on something that concerns them, please do so. And I believe there's a raise hand function. Okay. And thanks to Max, who's also taking notes. All right. You know, it just, if you'd like to bring up a question, now is the time.
Hi, this is Matt Carlino. I can't find the raise hand function. It was like
I think I made that up.
No, it was there. And
was there?
it literally just disappeared. I'm like scrambling.
It might be because I promoted you to panelist. Maybe that function goes away as a panelist.
Okay. Well, I live on 378 Medford Street. I'm a resident civil engineer. I have chatted with a couple of you outside of this panel before, but a group of neighbors in Gilman Square, along with Councilor Jesse Klingon, are looking at what a lot of other cities are doing with green infrastructure and green streets. And it's kind of like a longer topic, but there's definitely a lot of integration, which I think the Urban Forestry and Public Space Committee could definitely have a significant role in if it's implemented, and would like to maybe at the next meeting block out some time to give you guys like an overview and some examples of what some other cities are doing with it. It essentially is the integration of stormwater planning and design with landscape architecture and low impact development and urban forestry. So it's essentially using stormwater budgets to plant a ton of trees and pollinator gardens, and using nature to limit the amount of pollutants and stormwater enter our stormwater system and then discharge into our rivers.
So thanks, Matt, for coming. I do want to have this on the agenda for next month. It is is it an ordinance proposal?
I think that's where we're going with it.
That's
We'd like to draft like a green streets ordinance.
Yep.
And we could walk you through like what we're thinking with that. But really something like that is the product of a lot of different collaborations. So we could bring up what it kind of like big picture would be, but then it's kind of really up to like all of these different groups within the city to identify like how they really want it to function in Somerville. Because what happens in Portland, Oregon is a great example, but we could probably make it better.
Mr. Dwan?
Yeah, could I ask, and I'm looking for the right way to do this. I got a preview. I ran into Matt at Bow Market a couple weeks ago and got a preview, and it's really interesting stuff. And implementation wise, it's so cross-cutting across departments. Like the idea is to have this integrated picture between what is currently engineering, and honestly, I'm sure that parking would have input, and like there's a lot of it's just a different way of looking at stormwater infrastructure and tree planting as being the same thing. So one thing that we could do with our group is to be kind of a forum where some of the city, like one thing that we could do, which will be the default, is that Matt will champion a series of conversations that go to every city department and every working group and every committee in the city. And then eventually the city council will pass something, maybe. And another thing we could do is invite pieces of that conversation here. I'm curious what the committee members feel about like having that kind of conversation here where we bring in like members of the engineering department to talk about culverts and linear plantings and stuff like that, as opposed to being like, well, that is really outside of our bounds, let's not.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple of comments, Chris. As you were saying that, I was thinking about how we were talking just last month, I think it was just last month, about having a space where we could have different city representatives or people like you, Matt, to come together. And as I think a forum is a great word for that, but a place where we can have that conversation perhaps with other committees or other representation from committees or other city personnel. And this seems like it would be a really good way to kind of trial that to see how that works. I think this is a topic that's very important to all of us here. And we talk about these things, these kind of aspects here and there, but kind of getting this bigger picture. I'm really looking forward to seeing, Matt, what you and your colleagues have come up with, what you've been talking about with Jesse and others. So personally, I'm really looking forward to that. And Chris, I think that's a good idea. And something we've kind of talked about recently. Maybe this is a good time to do that.
Yeah, I think this would be an excellent forum.
Vanessa?
Yeah, it does sound really interesting. I agree with Chris. It does cut across many departments, and we do on some of our bigger streetscape projects already try to implement green infrastructure practices. We've done some of that with Somerville Ave, the Somerville Ave project, and it's being incorporated where feasible into the Spring Hill sewer separation project. So I don't know if you've already reached out to some of these other departments to see what's already in the works, to not have to reinvent the wheel there. There's having an informational forum and getting more information out is always great, and I appreciate the effort you're putting into this. Sounds really interesting. But I can think of the engineering department. They lead a lot of these big streetscape projects. The mobility department is involved with them, as well as sometimes capital projects and PSF, public space and urban forestry. So there's definitely a lot of city staff that would be interested in that. For me, I think that it does relate a lot to urban forestry. And so having some conversations about that in this committee does make sense in terms of inviting other departments. One reason that I was hoping we would have meetings Thursday evenings is because a lot of departments do work late, but some departments don't. So inviting like engineering folks, I believe their hours end at 4. They're 8 to 4, I think, every day. So they may or may not, be able to attend an after hours meeting. So maybe there's multiple locations where a conversation could happen with city departments during normal business hours for them.
I think I can answer, or because I know I haven't given you guys the presentation yet, and I know that we are doing green infrastructure in a lot of these like larger sewer stormwater separation projects. But there's a huge opportunity to do green infrastructure as like a retrofit, which is like we're not going to increase the pipe sizes. We're not going to reinvent the entire road. We're going to do installations of green infrastructure in a very low cost manner, and use that to be the effective stormwater management practice. So it's really like the intersection of the 3 different groups that you had mentioned. It's this kind of like there's green infrastructure, and that kind of talks to engineering, mobility, and urban forestry, and kind of brings everybody to the table like cohesively. And I think that's something that would be more towards like someone that's a landscape architect, would be like kind of that bridge. And I think it's something that would be more inclined towards like someone maybe in your group that would be like, if something like this was passed, someone in your group or with like a focus on plantings, like we wouldn't have the engineering department picking plants and doing landscape architecture design. Like it would be more like siting, but really that's about it. And I say this as a civil engineer.
So I am really excited about this, Matt. I think having you come back next month to give us a little bit more in depth. I don't know if we are to ever host this as a forum, I think it would need to be a separate special meeting, because this is surely an hour-long conversation easily if we had different departments. So, but I'm willing to look more into it and talk with you, Chris, and just I'm on board to help out this campaign. I see it as a game changer, and I really appreciate the work that you're putting into it. Thank you for your service on the Gilman Square Neighborhood Association as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yep. Who else might have a comment or want to say hello? Or put something in the chat.
Could I ask a question?
Who's that? Anne?
Yes.
Please, of course.
We had a tenants meeting Monday night, and Sarah was at the meeting, and I asked her if she knew, and I'm asking if you know, if the Somerville Redevelopment Authority has any mandate to include whatever environmental will is in the summer vision, for example, that would be applied to Cobble Hill and could be applied to Cobble Hill and the city's plans.
And to give background, this is Anne is a resident of Cobble Hill and has been involved in the reimagining 90 Washington Street or whatever it's being called. And so your question is, what influence does the SRA have to applying? Could you repeat the question, or if someone else heard it?
Well, for example, they have the planning department has a draft out right now, which essentially divides the green space into 3 different plots of land and destroys all the green space adjacent to 86 Washington Street in particular. And that has impact on the rest of Cobble Hill. Does the Somerville Redevelopment Authority have any mandate to be concerned about, query, ask what environmental standards are being adhered to, and are they being adhered to in what the planning department is proposing?
I can take a cut at that, and I see Wig Zamor is also in the audience, and he knows a lot. I would say that the thing from my understanding, and this is just from observing how these things work, but my understanding is that the various organs of the city, including the redevelopment authority, are bound by ordinance and by state law and by federal law. And by ordinance, we've got certain standards around the buildings that the city builds and the way we use lands and so on. The question of statements in Summer Vision, which is as close as our city comes to having a master plan, or any subordinate plans like the urban forestry master plan, or the climate action plan, or the pollinator action plan. Those have very, very limited binding authority. Those are statements of intent, and Summer Vision in particular has statements of intent without particular prioritization, such that I have found it's usually possible to justify just about anything using Summer Vision. So I think to your specific question, they're not going to be bound by a paragraph or even a page or a section that we find in Summer Vision.
Okay.
If the city chose to bind itself by policy or ordinance and say, we will never take a step backwards of even 1 more acre in terms of open and green space, that's a thing that either the city council or the mayor could do. And that would have force, but I don't think that we have anything like that on the books.
Thank you.
I'd say, Wig, if you have anything else to add, and sorry, can someone follow the chat? Okay.
Yep.
As well.
The city has confidence in us, and he's going to just listen.
Okay. And I'm really glad you're coming to these meetings, and I don't know how we're going to figure out on preserving the slope and the trees. Aside from that, we are going to keep our eyes on it. We have written a memo, and in our zoning ordinance, Summer Vision is cited dozens of times, as well as subordinating documents. So it's like, is there something in there? Is there a hook that we can say it's written here? But then there's like, you can point to a whole bunch of things. But I just really appreciate you coming and making sure we're on top of this. And please continue to come and reach out to myself or Chris or anyone anytime. And I just recognize that it's a stressful situation for you, especially.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? We got everybody? Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 3, which is updates from the city. And I believe, Malik, you're on.
I'll take that one first, actually.
And then Vanessa, you're on.
It was a last minute change, so I got the scoop from Breck. So the first update is city tree removals. There haven't been any planned removals. Breck did just send me a picture of a tree that got hit by a truck. So there was an accidental damage removal that's going to have to happen, but otherwise there haven't been any removals since last meeting. There's a new contract being set up now with the company to do prunings and removals across the city. So Breck will be sharing a new list sometime soon. And we do have a company right now doing some pruning work. I believe they've been working on the community path today, or they're going to be there tomorrow. So if you've seen any Northeastern trucks around, they're doing some pruning work. I think that's it. Any questions about city tree removal? Okay, then I will, Jennifer.
I'm here. Hello?
Yeah,
Hi,
actually,
Blake, hold on, Jennifer had a
oh,
question.
yep.
Oh.
Go ahead. Jennifer, you can go.
Okay, I just was wondering about, I just was reminded of this when you said that there was a tree that had gotten hit by a truck. I attended the last public tree hearing for tree removal, and there was the one, I think it was near Powder House Circle out near Tufts, was hit by a car. And it didn't occur to me until later, but who evaluates the damage done to that tree? I know there were separate issues with this particular incident with an insurance issue, but who makes that evaluation? Do you and Malik, Brett, go out there and look and see what is that damage? How extensive is it? What is the, is there any kind of prediction for further damage caused by, a disease, that could more readily get into the tree through the damaged bark? I was just curious about that.
Yeah, good question. You reminded me that there might be removals upcoming. So when a tree gets hit by a car and it's a hit and run, when we hear about it, we go out and inspect. Usually Breck will go inspect the tree since he's the tree warden in charge of the safety of our public and of our existing public shade trees. So he's the first point of contact. If he's not available, Malik or I will go out, but he gets contacted first. In this particular case that I mentioned, a truck got stuck to the tree, so you can definitely make the assessment with the truck still there and see how the tree is. And in cases like that, a police report can be filed, and that's when the insurance claim comes into play. So in that case, the insurance recovery company will follow up and get the money to replant the tree and to actually perform the removals, or they'll reimburse us if it's an immediate removal concern. But that does remind me, we did have the tree hearing on January 5th to discuss tree removals of one that was hit by a car last year and a couple of trees at near the Powder House Alewife Brook Circle. So those trees did pass through the tree hearing process and will be removed soon. There was, I think it was 6 or so trees around the Powder House Alewife Brook Circle. 2 in the middle, they're actually on DCR property, and then a couple closer on Powder House, closer to North Street, where there will be sidewalk in the future. So trees can't live where there will be a new sidewalk. I know that work is starting, so I don't know when the trees are actually going to be removed. That's engineering department's purview. And the one on College Avenue, 103 College Avenue, I believe, just doing this from memory, was hit by a car. So that will be removed through the insurance company probably in time for spring planting. So I'm not sure exactly when.
question about that, just from, and it's okay to follow up via email if this isn't to hand because you're doing it secondhand. Do you know whether that payment for removal and for replanting is on the same scale as the tree preservation ordinance with linked to diameter, or is it like a fixed fee when we go to the insurance company?
It is linked to diameter, so it's the cost of buying a tree or X number of trees to make up the diameter of the tree that's lost. So it doesn't also add the tree, man, end of the day, my words get a little blah, but our replacement cost in the tree preservation ordinance also is based on our current planting contract. So it includes the cost of planting and maintenance for 2 years. The insurance recovery process does not include those other costs. So it's just the money to buy a tree, but X number of trees to make up the size of tree that's lost.
Cool. Totally reasonable that the insurance company has rules in place for that.
Yeah. It's better than, we used to just get trees that made up that number and they just drop them in the DPW yard randomly and not know where they were going or when they were coming. So we'd much prefer to have the money so we can make some plans and do the work properly.
I just want to throw something out there for all of us to think on. You know, when trees come down, you know, I'm like, oh, what sculptor could use this tree? And I don't know, maybe sculptors have sort of like, arborists that they hook up with in terms of like, you know, coordinating times to pick things up. But if there are ever trees that come down in parks, I'm just thinking like there are people doing hugelkultur and, you know, just having logs for nature play. Like, I just want to put it out there to get us sort of thinking about, you know, because it's hard when trees come down, regardless of species, sort of. But it's just want to start thinking about if we're going to, you know, become really sustainable and think about reusing and sourcing locally. Just want to have that. And I've been thinking a lot about it with nature play too. So
Yeah,
anyone has any?
adding on to that, I'm active on social media, and fairly frequently when I express concern about a large tree that's coming down, and by concern I usually just mean sadness at that point, members of the community reach out to me offering to do things with the wood, offering to, and the most touching ones are the ones who are like, let me make you something out of that tree.
Oh.
You know, and so there are definitely people in the community who would make use of particularly large, particularly healthy sections. And I know there's all kinds of practicalities to that, but I completely agree, Tori. There's a desire and there's some energy there. If we can find a way to, you know, even salvage 10% of what's just going in the chipper, it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think there are also organizations who will take this wood. I don't know if that happens around here. I think it's common in Europe, but you can actually kind of recycle that. They'll buy it. I think that and so I'm going to start talking and saying all these things, but I have a very vague memory of when I read this. It was some time ago, but I do want to say it just to kind of get it out there, and I'll try to remember to look it up later. But to actually buy these trees that are cut, and they'll take this wood and they'll put it into, you know, even if it's particle board or something like that, it somehow gets recycled or remade into another type of material. And I'm not sure if that's very common. I think in the UK they do it. That might have been where I heard about it, but that could be something to kind of keep in mind and maybe look up. I'll make a note to look up and see if that's also an option, if there are places nearby that will actually be interested in even paying for it. You know, would be great, but you know, just to at least take it away and make some use out of it. I love the idea of making these heartfelt kinds of things. I think we had these discussions when we cut down that big elm at Prospect Park. You know, it's a lovely sentiment, and to be able to reuse something, a tree like that, is a nice thing. But I think wherever we can try to do this is a benefit somewhere. So thanks for letting me say that.
Okay, thanks everybody for responding to that. Private tree removals, permits and exceptions. That's Malik.
Hello. All right, so I've updated the sheet up to today. And to review 2022, we've had 107 permitted trees removed as individual trees. 107 trees have been removed through the permit process. 100 trees are supposed to be replanted. 95 trees were exempt, and we have gotten $17,000 in to the tree fund. And as of this year, it's only been 5 trees that were exempt, and we have 4 permit applications that are currently being processed. One of which wasn't really a permit application, it was just someone put one in by mistake because it wasn't private tree area. So 3. And any questions, the sheet should be up to date. And I will go over the individual exemptions right now. Let's see. Boom. Okay. So going back to the last time I was reporting on this, we have 30 Dartmouth Street, 127 Elm Street, 132 Perkins Street, 12 Woodbine Street, 88 Orchard Street would be back into last year. So these are the most recent exemptions that we've had in the last 2 months.
I will just share for the folks who don't have access to this Google Sheet. Usually at this point I screen share it. There's a sheet that we don't share completely publicly because it contains it contains some personal information. If anybody in the public has questions about a particular address, I'm always happy to answer specific questions. Oh, good. I can be the presenter now. Let's TPO updates now. Private tree removals. Show this window. So you should be looking at something that's almost unreadably small, probably. So let's blow that up a little. So what we've got on this tab are the exemptions. There's a number of reasons that the tree would be exempt from the permit process. If it's an invasive species, if it's hazardous, if it's actually dead, it's not even technically a tree anymore and it doesn't show up on this list. Or if it's the owner occupant of a 3-unit or less wants to do removal on their own property, that's also exempt. So what we've got here, column G is the one that I always skim to, where we see this is an invasive species, a fairly large one. At Elm Street, there's a major limb failure where it's no longer viable. On Perkins Street, we've got a huge silver maple that is actively hazardous. So this is the level of review that we do. Malik keeps this up to date, and then we look through and we can see. So when people ask, did people ask for a permit? These are the ones that were exemptions, and then the applications that are still in process are these other tabs. So that's what Malik is going through here.
I really appreciate personally, Malik, the work you put into it and your role in the city. So I just saw Oxford Street, the persimmon on Oxford Street, that magnificent tree, coming down is really going to hurt. An American persimmon. Oh my God. That's yeah. Sorry. It's just I guess we really need to encourage getting people to plant native species, especially things like persimmon and pawpaw, on their property to really be supportive for our ecosystem as well as for our own health. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Could I ask a quick one about North Street here on the Clarendon Hill development? Is that, I will admit that I do not know, is the Clarendon Hill development private property, so they need to put in a permit, or is that city such that it would go through the hearing process?
That is private.
Okay.
They did also have one tree for this project that was on public property, and they did have a tree hearing for that one.
Yeah, and I remember that this was, they actually came and presented the plan to us, and it was, it made a lot of sense what they were doing. There was a large number of very small, very sickly trees that were being replaced to add substantial housing and like fix the development. Okay, that was my question.
Okay. You know, I put the agenda back up. I decided that I kind of do like having it up there. I love everyone's faces, but it's helpful.
This is the thing I can do for you.
Next up is fall tree planting.
There we go.
Proceed.
Vanessa, take it away.
Okay. Fall tree planting. It's not fall, and guess what? We're done with tree planting. Hooray! We finished very soon after the last meeting. 195 trees were planted. I also did finally get the fall tree planting map up on the website. So if you want to go see who, what, where, why, maybe not the why, but the who and the what, you can go to the Urban Forestry webpage and it'll pop right up for you. And not exactly fall tree planting, but that did, except for the maintenance, wrap up our current contract. So I will be starting the new contract for calendar year 2023 tree planting soon. Questions? I'll put a link in the chat too.
So we're starting spring plantings soon, you said? Well,
I need to do the invitation for bids to get a contractor to start thinking about spring planting and get.
Is it every year we have to get a new contractor? I thought it was like every 2.
Yep. It's every year for tree planting.
Seems like a lot of extra work.
It really is. The problem is we can only have 3-year contracts and I have 2 years of maintenance. So I can only have 1 year of planting plus 2 years of maintenance equals 3 years.
Oh, well, okay. Is that a state law?
Yeah, I believe it's a state finance law.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel your pain, Tori.
Yeah, like we need you for other things.
I've tried. Yep.
Okay. Well, as soon as you know, I don't know, whatever help we can be with that process, and
So far,
as soon as you.
The only change I can think to the setup of my technical specifications is what you mentioned last time, Tori, having 2 bags on the stakes. So I think that might be my only change. So my process is fairly low input.
Well,
so
thanks for making that. I think that will hopefully help longevity of our trees. And as soon as you, please inform us when wish lists is gonna come together, because so we can all, you know, contribute and share knowledge of the Ecological Landscaping Alliance's conference is coming up soon, and that's always a wonderful place to ask people what's been working in their city. So so please let us know when the wish list goes out, and I'll be thinking about trees, and that's
I
ask
have
on the committee too.
I have a question. I remember that we were all really happy that Eversource fixed the gas main on Northern Somerville Ave. And then I have been up there and I've seen the trees that we put in after that was fixed. We actually did plant some trees, and I'm looking at spring and fall here, and I don't see a bunch of trees up on Northern Somerville Ave in either spring or fall. Was that like more than a year ago?
I think I put some in fall 2021, I think.
Okay.
I also was going to plant on Somerville Ave across from Mossland along the tracks this season, but I cannot plant there because there are cables and MISC dig safe things prevented me from planting there. So I don't know how they ever got trees on that side of the tracks, or that sidewalk there, but I don't think I'm going to be able to ever put any back in.
All right. No biggie. I'm just, and time has no meaning. I've lost all track of the calendar years, but I remember being happy about that. Now I'm looking at the maps. So anyway, thank you for putting them in. I know they're there.
That could be a great spot to think about raised trees. Just a thought for the future, or raised planters of some sort, because it's full sun, totally open corridor. Yeah, put it in the brain space for later.
So is it on a sidewalk? Is that
It's just like a huge sidewalk next to the train tracks. So it's like retaining wall is below you. So it makes sense why you can't put trees in there, and trees probably aren't happy there because none of it's natural. Like there's no soil below there. It's just
right?
the train station.
But
But
like
it's a quite wide sidewalk, and it's just super exposed and hot. And it would be a beautiful space to have some plants, but I'm sure there's a lot of logistical barriers to that happening.
maybe some self-watering planters, or
Yeah.
some artwork. And is that city property? It is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like the Cambridge line is maybe a block from where the screen share
Yeah,
is right now.
that area is quite hot and barren. So
Yeah, and is this the space where there was like no dirt underneath it, just cables?
Well, there's some dirt under the sidewalk, but it is not even just right exactly at the crosswalk, but around there. Yeah, you're in the right neighborhood. Right.
I might add too that Chris and I joined the Mothers Out Front when we walked along to when we did the Eversource. So we were testing for the gas leaking, and there was a lot of concern in the neighborhood about particulates coming from the train tracks. And so I think the kind of the bed idea to put a tree in, I love that idea, but might want to consider a way that would really buffer noise and pollution coming from those tracks to, if we were to consider something like that, which I think we should, we need to really consider that part of it. And it is just so hot and exposed and loud and smelly there, that I think just having something to protect the residents who live across the street from that would be nice. And I'd also like to add one thing for what Tori said. Tori, when you're talking with your colleagues at ELA, remember that we're looking for medium-sized trees that we can put under wires is our huge Achilles heel with in the planting. So keeping that in mind, maybe somebody will have some good ideas on that. So ask around.
Somebody will have to know. You know, all these slides are making me think of Matt Carlino and what he is sort of proposing, which we'll see next month. But you know, a lot of it is, you know, sort of this retrofitting and putting in green infrastructure. And I imagine we're going to do a Somerville Ave sewer. The sewer separation is going to come down all along Somerville Ave eventually. But you know, I'm just thinking, okay, maybe a couple bump outs just to add to the greenery. You know, there's a lot of parking here, so just, let's. If you're in the crowd, madam, well, I'll tell you when I see you. Anyway, so yeah, definitely could use some more life. Okay, anything else on the fall tree planting? I'm being cognizant of time and gonna try to. Okay, Somerville Pollinator Action Plan. Give us the update, Vanessa.
So we received 50 applications for the Somerville Pollinator Action Plan Advisory Committee. I may have already reported this before. And so that's great, lots of interest. Super happy about that. We have been very short-staffed in PSUF, so we are waiting to hire the new PSUF staff members to lead this process. So it's been on pause waiting for the new positions to be filled.
Can I ask a quick question about that? This is Amy.
Hi, Amy. Sure.
I mean, I can definitely understand the being overstaffed, but I wonder if has any messaging gone out to the people that applied just so that they know. So I feel like when you don't hear anything for a long time, you kind of put it to the side and then they might make other commitments. So just has there been messaging just to let people know the process is still happening? It's just, you know, delayed because of the need of additional staff.
I know that we responded to a few people who asked directly, but I don't think there's been a blanket information message, which probably not because you would have received one. So I don't think so. I can make that suggestion.
I mean, if it's easy to do, it might just to let people know that, you know, they might think, oh, I've been rejected and I'm not going to think about it anymore. Just that they know, you know, what's happening from being in job searches before. It's helpful. No, this is not a job, but you know, the same idea applies.
Yeah, understood. I agree. It's hard when you don't hear anything.
Okay. All right. Quincy Street open space.
It did skip over native planting ordinance report.
Oh, no, let's go back. Native planting ordinance report.
So I've been working on crunching all of the numbers. This does need to go online, but I can show you the rough draft in the meantime. I'm going to take back control here.
Ooh, theft.
Make presenter.
All right, I'm gonna go.
Okay, is that showing you my Word document?
Yes.
Okay, so shoot, hard to navigate everything. So per the natives planting ordinance, we are supposed to put together a report for every fiscal year in the following December. So I put together all of the trees and other plants that have been planted in fiscal year 2022. So that's from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. I've grouped them by the property type, where the plantings occurred, and have percentages here of native versus not. So city parks, this includes plantings at various parks, one tree at Central Hill, various trees and shrubs and ground covers at Conway Park, and then a few plantings that mostly I did in parks through my tree planting contract. So a few trees at Nathan Tufts, Lincoln Park, Seven Hills, and Perkins. There are a lot of ground covers in Conway, so that's where we get this huge count number, 1,454 plants total. We've got almost 100% native in our parks for fiscal year 22, 98.9%. There was a few non-native plants planted. I also did put asterisks near properties that technically aren't subject to the native planting ordinance, but they well exceeded the requirement, so I included them anyways. And the report also shows the requirement for that city area. So we were required to plant 75% native plants, and we did 98.9 in parks. Street trees, that was all my contracts, and that was citywide in FY22. I planted, my cat will not stop meowing at me. I planted 407 trees, and they were just over 50% native. I thought that was higher, but I had been including the parks trees in that count before, so it was a little bit lower than I thought. I do need to fill in the streetscapes section. I just thought of this right before the meeting, but we did the pilot project plantings or count as streetscape planting, so I'm going to incorporate those. I need to go through the counts there, but I think that was all or almost 100% native. Do you remember, Tori or Leah?
Definitely 100% native. 4
okay.
trees and like a couple hundred
I added the trees into street trees, so it's just the non-tree.
Okay.
100%. There we go. And then other city property, there was the DPW in front of the DPW building, DPW grounds planted, replanted that landscape, and then Healy Schoolyard, I believe, fits into the other city property category. So in these two areas, trees, shrubs, ground covers, and grasses were planted. 188 plants in total in FY22, 88.8% native. So we are meeting all of the requirements and in most cases exceeding them. And this, I'm gonna like fancy this up a little bit and then put this up on the website and share it with the city council. Any questions?
I have a quick question, Vanessa, about do contractors plant at other city properties like the Healy School? Who's responsible for that?
So the Healy School project is managed by PSUF, and there are contractors who do the planting.
Okay, and then the subsequent watering, which is where I was going with it. Okay.
Yeah,
All right, thank you.
Involved. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And the Healy Schoolyard only planted trees in FY22, so in next year's report will include a whole bunch of other plants at the Healy Schoolyard as well.
Meaning the shrubs and ground cover?
Yeah.
And are those species already chosen for those projects?
Yeah, they were planted in the fall.
Oh, they were. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I misunderstood. I thought you said they were going to be planted. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, they are going to be in the report, but they've actually already been planted.
Got it.
Just
okay.
The time difference of the reporting requirement.
Okay, thanks.
My question is, why, for example, Central Hill is not, I mean, that's the high school and City Hall, so why is there an asterisk there?
So that was part of either the high school project or the Central Hill project. It was just one tree. I forget why. Actually, there was two trees, one species. So the native species ordinance, when the native planting ordinance was ordained, it exempted projects that had already been designed or funded, or already had contracts in place.
Okay, okay,
So I added them, but I technically didn't have to.
I see.
They're
Well, I
they're still
appreciate
meeting
that.
the requirement.
Yeah, I just want to say that the effectiveness of the native planting ordinance, we can just look at the high school as an example of where it's just a huge miss with such an extensive landscape when I don't even know what the percentage is, maybe 50% native plants, maybe more, but a lot of cotoneasters and bamboo and ginkgo bilobas and lots of non-native salvia and liripy. And I'm just like, okay, like, even with the best intentions as a city, like this ordinance has moved the needle and is now influencing other municipalities across Massachusetts, and Lexington just got a 70% in for all new permitted spaces. So private public development. No, it was actually focused more on private when approving new development. So thank you for putting this together. It is part of the ordinance, providing a spreadsheet like this at the end of the year. And yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Vanessa, and also the success of the native planting ordinance, as well as the need for it to kind of continue to be worked on. And maybe, I don't know if this is another memo, but there's a bunch of Rose of Sharons planted at the DPW, and I'm just like, they're on the invasive species list of some other states, and they're beautiful, but our native crimson rose mallow is just as beautiful, and it is, it's a very similar plant. So, and I do kind of question memorialization, that reasons for being non-native, because it's just like, well, who's deciding which point in time is time to be, it is the moment in history where certain things have to look a certain way. So anyway, I imagine that the Pollinator Action Plan Committee will be giving us information to inform the native planting ordinance as they do their work. Any questions on this item or thoughts? Okay, thank you, Vanessa, for your extra attention to detail in this report, and we'll go on to the Quincy Street park. And for background on this, at the last meeting, we came up with a bunch of questions to ask the city and or the horticulturalist to sort of understand the reasoning for the massive loss of vegetation at the Quincy Street site, and understanding of how it might be revegetated. And Vanessa, do you have any information?
So because I didn't get the questions until last Friday, I wasn't able to get answers yet. So I will have to wait till next month. I'll have some more information for you then.
Okay, anything else on this item? Okay, we'll go on to item number 4, and that is staying informed on urban forestry related job postings and RFPs. So I asked to put this on because we missed a big hire. The ecological planner position was posted in November, early November, and the deadline was November 27th. And the ecological planner position was the person who will be leading the Pollinator Action Plan Committee and will be advising on, to the city and to developers, and working with PSUP in order to create, hopefully with what would be more ecological landscaping practices, plantings, and and Vanessa reminded us at the September meeting and told us to keep an eye out. And I feel like, and then I lost focus on it, and so the posting went out, and someone reaches out to me few days before winter break, maybe, I don't know, the 21st, and says, "Hey, Tori, you'd be perfect for this position." And I'm like, "What position?" I'm like, "The ecological planner position." And then I'm like, "Oh my goodness, this," like, so once I got it, I started to share it with networks, and not even sure if it was still open. And then I like contacted the mayor, and I'm like, "Please, can you extend this a few days, because I'm just getting word of it." And so this was like a moment where like everyone should have known about this position and be sharing it with our networks, and it didn't happen. And I just want to make sure this doesn't ever happen again. So I want to hear from you guys, like, what is, a possible mechanism that we can have in place, where maybe it's in this committee where, one of us checks every month the postings for jobs, the RFPs, and like this becomes a place that that we can remind ourselves and share with our networks who's, if there's a position that comes up that is going to be related to urban forestry, or, that we can share with people we know, whether it be, a planner, a DPW worker, a contract for a park. And did you guys know about this? Am I the only one who was late to the game in finding out? So that's the reason I put it on here, and just wanted to just make sure we recognize ourselves as resources, and not have this happen again.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great idea to review them. I knew about it. Do you get the like City of Somerville, probably like monthly newsletter email?
Yes.
On the bottom, there's always open positions.
Yep.
And so I feel like I always just scan that, and that's how I saw it. But I think reviewing the, list of jobs that we would be interested in sharing with our groups, having that as a, maybe we have it under housekeeping or one of our other agenda items. I think that's a great idea, just to bring it all to front of mind.
Leah, can I ask, when did you see it? Did you see it in November?
Trying to remember. It would have just been the whatever previous month Somerville newsletter. And then, yeah, a couple people sent it to me as well, I think. But yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I guess my question is, like, I kind of sort of track open positions, and there's never been less than 100 of them anytime that I've looked. So it's a big place. This one in particular, we're all pretty passionate and have solid networks around this specific position. Is it possible to throw some boundaries on it so that it doesn't just become like another laundry list request? Because I know those emails that come out monthly, and there's like the 15 that the comms department thinks are the most interesting, and then there's an ellipsis to like click into the job site. How would we condition our request to get the most interesting, the hires that are of interest to this group? Like, I feel like this one in particular is around planting standards and species selection standards on city property, which is actually the mandate of this committee. So it's like, that's a perfect fit. I myself remain completely interested in the tree crew so that Breck doesn't have to wait on new contracts on the regular. Are there other, could we say, like, so for this position, is this going to report into PSUF, Vanessa? Like,
Yes.
would it be would it be reasonable to say that we're pretty interested in PSOF with an emphasis on the forestry and the plantings part, or is it bigger than that?
Probably interested in a filtered list of DPW. And then probably just PSF after that, right?
That's kind of my take as well. What do you think, Tori?
Maybe
Well, I
strategic
feel-
planning and community development, mobility, transportation. Yeah, it's kind of big.
Yeah, yeah, it can be really big. You know, and I don't think these positions are going to be like coming along like, well, maybe they'll be more frequent as we go forward, but like the horticulturalist, we have a horticulturalist, but if that position comes up, I don't know if we've hired a DPW gardener. You know, that position, it may have happened already. I wrote in RFPs just to be like, okay, well, you know, kind of being aware of what parks are being worked on, but that doesn't necessarily have to be part of it. Yeah, just jobs related to parks maintenance, urban forestry planning, arborists. Yeah, that was. I'm going back and forth on RFPs, but I mean, if that's something I want to stay on top of to share, I can. I mean, that's just something I can do. Bring back to the committee or.
Yeah. So here's a suggestion then. Let's Tori throw a standing item on here, and it doesn't even have to be an update from the city, but let's at least you and I commit to look at the job postings site and to look at the RFPs site, and just as a reminder to ourselves, have it not as another standing item. And that doesn't have to be another thing that city staff report out on, because when they go out, they're always public. Any of us could have looked, and none of us really noticed it.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I can commit to that.
Yeah. And then like maybe whoever is not sharing that month could agree that they could go look at the website.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Jennifer.
I have a quick question about, I want to get back to Leia's comment about reviewing the RFPs. Is it possible to do that before they get posted? And if so, is there a way that this committee can inform some of the requirements and job descriptions and other kinds of expectations and outcomes that we would expect to see with a position like this one? Vanessa, is that kind of overstepping our bounds here, or is that something we could potentially participate in, at least just to give some feedback on?
I guess it's I'm going to say generally that's outside of the bounds of the UFC. I don't, if you're talking specifically about the horticulturalist RFP or more broadly, like I don't even know most of the RFPs that go out. I know my projects.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking
so
more about like things very specific to the types of things that we advocate for, like the planting and species selection, other. So
I mean, I think that's beyond what the UFC should and could do. A lot of these things have to go through certain rules and regulations as it is, and you can look at existing RFPs that are out there and review it at your own time frame and make comments for any future ones. You know, we will, I'm sure, be doing a horticulturalist going forward, but the current contract still has, I believe, years, 1 or 2 years on it. So, you know, that's not going back out to bid anytime soon, but when it does, the standards will be probably, you know, taken from the existing
All right.
contract and spec. So if you want to review something that's existing and make comments at your leisure, we can consider them, but like contributing to doing that for the actual document, I think is more than what this committee should do.
Okay. Thank you.
I also appreciate Chris and Tori taking the lead on reviewing jobs and RFPs, because I know the ones that I'm in charge of and maybe the ones Malik's in charge of, but that's about it. So I am happy to not take that burden on and leave it in your more than capable hands.
It feels like one of those where asking anybody else to do it would be asking like that person to guess what is on Tori on my mind.
Ah.
And that's just mean. Like Manager 101 says, don't make them guess what's on your mind.
It's very good.
I would throw in, since you mentioned the point of the committee, that if we really, really wanted to get ourselves involved in recommending on those minutiae, we could make a case, and I am not making this case. We could make a case to ask the city council to expand our mandate to review and opine on RFPs and potentially hires. I bet that would be a really fun debate. I don't know that it's a good idea, but right now we advise on planting mostly for trees and understory plants. But we could ask for that kind of power, but I completely agree with Vanessa that right now we are mercifully shielded from the city's procurement and hiring processes.
Yeah, I'm going back and forth on this one. I mean, I wouldn't want to limit ourselves and say no, never, ever. Like, for example, being like, oh, in the new RFP for our, person who does the tree installations, like, oh, let's get more bags. Like that was something that kind of came out naturally and was successful. And I was thinking, oh, it just slipped my mind. Oh, like, oh, it'd be really nice if the Prospect Hill Park said, like, specified genetically wild plants, because the more and more we if we're trying to make sure we're surviving climate change, and having plants that are not clones is going to be very important in this effort. And Cavicchios is the main sort of like landscape wholesaler in the area, and the plants are cloned. They're genetically identical to like, they're genetically identical, which is, it's just, it doesn't allow for, well, genetic diversity is very important for allowing the continuation of any species. And so that really bottlenecks it. And just starting to have that as a regular thing, like we use plants that are sourced, that are genetically wild sourced and are not cloned. Like, yeah, I want that to be a standing sort of, operating procedure when we're asking contractors to procure plants. And I don't know if that's like, who would I tell that to? I mean, so maybe there's wiggle room. Maybe it's just personal conversation I have with Vanessa and Louisa. Maybe it's a change to our bylaws, or the TPO. I don't know, but it's just an interesting thing to think about, especially when it can be of value, not when we're getting in the way, but being of value and continuing the mission of what we're here to do, and especially of this administration, who's so very much focused on pollinators and their survival. All right, anyone else? Moving along. Okay, I don't have any updates on number 5, which is the use of pesticides at Maxwell's Green. I said I was going to do a thing, didn't do it. I haven't. I know I think I had an outline. Actually, if you guys can help me remember, we were going to come up with a general verbiage to share with developers who ran POPs. We're going to share that with the city council. I think that was, but then we could also do something more specific to Maxwell's Green and their sort of mission to providing this green area when it's like, you know, using poison to on their massive amounts of lawn. So I don't have any updates on this. And I will put it in my notes, and maybe this can be something we can talk about in a SAP meeting. Would you guys be, is that cool?
Yeah, we got a big SAP list
Okay,
to do, but we can throw it on there.
okay.
I think it
Yeah,
makes
we said
sense
we
for
might.
that.
I think we said we might draft an email that we would review with the committee to then send to Maxwell's Green, if I'm recalling correctly.
That's how I remember. I'm trying to open the minutes because I know it's in there, but I can't open them. So
Yeah,
um,
I think that was the gist. So yeah, I'll add it to SAP agenda.
Anything on that item?
Probably just
Okay.
hold for future
Yep.
updates.
Outreach and Arbor Day.
can we just do the adopt a tree quickly? I just have a quick thing to say on that before we move to the other outreach.
Absolutely.
And in the interest of time, only just to say that we will probably be taking the Adopt a Tree program full force starting in February. So I'll be reaching out to the working group to coordinate that. I think much of it will go very similarly to the way it did last year. We recently had a kind of feedback going over our 2022 program and went over some feedback from that. So I think that we've got some items such as, I think, communicating with folks who have adopted trees will be on the list of something we can revise. But generally, I think Adopt a Tree program will go on as it did last year. So yeah, so I'll be reaching out to set up that a working group meeting for that. Vanessa and Amy I think I've sent you everything I owed for that, for as far as the business forum, right? Was there anything else? So to get everybody else up to speed on that, the city has adopted 2 new languages that we will now be translating the Adopt a Tree tags, but also business forms and some website information. So that will now include Hindi and Chinese. And we will be prepared to be able to point people to information that has the Adopt a Tree in these different languages. So I think that'll be a really nice addition to the program. So there will be a lot more to report next month, but I did want to give everyone an update on what's happening so far. So thanks.
Do you want me to talk about the poster conference, the contest, Jennifer? Or
Yes, please. Yeah, go for it.
so last year, as you may remember, we attempted to get 5th graders involved in the Arbor Day poster contest and were not successful. No teachers really were able to add it into their curriculum. So Jennifer and I were discussing this year a way to make it maybe more enticing to teachers. And we sent out an email to 5th grade teachers offering to come visit their classrooms and do an activity about trees. So to kind of make it something, you know, that would take work off of them rather than add additional work.
And so far, I think we had 2 teachers respond with interest, unless there's anyone else that I missed from the West Somerville School. So that will be our test run, I guess, to see how well this works. We have some ideas about some activities that we could do. I got some feedback from colleagues at Leslie who do kind of outdoor education and work with students about kind of tree related activities that could be engaging and give them a chance to explore a little bit. And then we'd also incorporate some time to have them start on their posters during that time, and then they could finish them later. And so we have at least 2 teachers interested, and Jennifer and I have gone through the CORI process, or are going through the CORI process to get approved. And if anyone else would be interested in joining us, either for the West Somerville or any additional classrooms, you could definitely let us know. And you know, we'd be happy to have other people join in, either, yeah, for those classrooms, or if we get more interest along the way. So we'll let you. I think we're going to try to visit the classrooms in February, since the posters have to be done by March. So we can give updates on how well it went and what kind of feedback we got, and you know, if there's something we want to try to expand and do other types of classroom outreach in the future. Anything I missed, Jennifer, on that?
No, I don't think so. Leah and Tori, I know you've expressed some interest in doing outreach with schools, so I've forwarded that information to you so you can look at it when you have some time. I know middle of the day stuff is tough to get out there and visit classrooms, but if this goes well, and it's a 45-minute period, so it's not a huge time commitment, but it's, you know, it's also kind of figuring out what it is that we want to go over. The teachers are very interested in having us talk about the role of trees in the ecosystem of a city, and explaining to the kids how that works, and maybe bringing them outside and taking a look at trees. And so it could be a really interesting segue into other ways that we can reach that, you know, which kind of overlaps a little bit with the youth engagement program that we're interested in. So it'll be very interesting to see how this turns out. I'm looking forward to it. But by all means, you know, look at that information that I sent to you, and if anybody else is interested, I can forward it to you as well. And if you have any feedback, you know, even if you can't be involved directly, if you have any ideas, please feel free to add them into that folder that I shared.
Yeah, I'd love to be engaged on coming up with ideas, and I can help. I've done a lot of like youth engagement activities, so writing out a lesson plan, for lack of a better word. Happy to brainstorm on that. I think time, I probably can't make it.
Yeah, the timing is, yeah, understood.
But I think this is a great thing, and if we ever integrated weekend events or collaborated with like summer camps in the summer, or growing center, or tabling events, I think sort of generating our toolbox of activities is awesome.
Yeah, and just interacting with the teachers too, maybe hear what they have to say, you know, what would be useful for them, and maybe some ideas that they would have too. So this could be, you know, the beginning of something really fruitful.
Definitely.
Jennifer, this is Tarsha. I'm an ex-teacher, so I would be interested. Just send me the information. You have my email.
Do I have your?
I'm under Denise. Sorry, my name's under Denise. My nickname's Tarsha. So Denise Stack, Dennis and Denise Stack.
I have your email. I can share it with you.
Okay, I'll get your email from Vanessa, Denise.
Yeah, so classroom was where I lived for a long time.
Okay, so. Great. That would be wonderful.
I'm just curious why you picked 5th grade for that. But that's a different issue, and I don't want to get into it, but that's okay.
Okay, yeah, not a problem. It's actually an event that's sponsored by the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation. They're the ones who it's
grade level. Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Got it.
I'll be in touch with you, Denise.
Right, thank you. Right, bye-bye.
And I just learned by clicking around that if you're a panelist, you can see the attendee list. And if you right click on somebody's name, it won't show you the email address that they put in, but it will offer to copy it to your clipboard. So
I see that. Thank you, Chris.
assuming that people put in a real email, which they didn't have to, and that's totally fine, then you can copy whatever they put in and you can have it. I didn't know that that happened, but
No.
it does.
Always
This
learning.
is I want to just kind of read out. Claire is saying, Jennifer and Amy, we have Claire is from Earthwise Aware. She is stalwart and ecological education. She has activity material at EWA that could help, and activities that have been successful with the Woburn Library. Just to add, okay, so she's a resource. Can I come along to one of these? I'm Corey checked and extra Corey checked because I'm running an after school program, and I need to learn about making curriculum and lesson plans. So I would love to, help out with this. The age range I have are not all fifth graders, but maybe I can share with the Argenziano teachers too. So
That'd be great.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah,
So
I
they
believe
were-
the Argenziano art teacher said that they were going to. I don't know if any of them wanted us to come, but they were going to participate, I believe, in the posters. I just don't know. I haven't heard if any they want us to visit or not. But and yeah,
Oh,
that'd
okay.
be wonderful if you could come, Tori. That'd be wonderful to have you come along. Too.
Yeah, it would be great. And if you could communicate, if you could liaise between the Argenziano teachers at all with us, so that we can, if they are interested, make sure they're all set with the process. And if they did want to visit, we could do that.
Okay.
Thanks. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for your work on this.
Okay, and Claire, I will be in touch with you about getting that information that you have as well. I'm gonna make myself a note for that.
Okay, anything else on this item? Let's go along to species selection and planting protocol, SAP. We did not meet this month.
No, we have a big list of stuff to do, and we have nothing to show for it.
Oh, guilty. No.
Blame the holidays.
Yes.
We have time. It's only the beginning of the year.
Exactly. But yeah,
we'll commit to meeting before our next meeting, and we'll have lots of updates to share.
Exactly what Leah said. Okay, moving along. Okay, I'm going to move along, but I just want to recognize that Renee Scott was asked questions in the chat around the native species, the native planting ordinance, and I do want to go just put a pin in that, and hopefully we can answer the questions that she asked. But let's just continue on with the agenda as it is for right now. So, tree preservation ordinance.
We had a decent conversation last time around some draft ideas. I have since then spoken with the Green and Open Somerville advisors and with the Climate Coalition of Somerville. They had some thoughts that were broadly aligned with what we talked about. I don't have anything ready to share with this group, but I'm continuing to kick it around with various folks. If there are other groups that anybody thinks would be interested in potential updates to our tree preservation ordinance, which is the law that creates this committee and the permit process for private tree removal, and there's some definitional stuff that we mostly have to do according to state law around like having a tree warden, stuff like that. Just let me know who else should be in the conversation. My plan is to keep kicking that around, and then potentially in the spring, after the city council has worked through some early stuff, try to get together a recommendation from this committee, put it into a memo, and then maybe have them discuss it. Who knows?
Vanessa,
Chris, maybe you want to have a meeting with Breck and Malik and I offline so we can talk about some of our thoughts. And you know, Malik wasn't here at the last meeting, but since he runs the TPO, the private tree permits, he might have some good insights. Maybe we can squeeze in a
That would
meeting.
actually be super awesome. And in preparation for that, one of the big unknowns anytime there's an ordinance like this that frankly makes work for city staff is how much effort are we putting on the city staff? Like, how does this show up in staff counts? And at the time, 3-4 years ago, we just didn't know. It was all kind of estimates. Now we kind of know. So I would love to have that on that agenda.
Quick comment. So the one of the outreach efforts that's high on our list is this youth engagement, and part of that was going to be some possible revision to the TPO for requirements of youth members for the UFC. So if there's any way we could kind of coordinate the submission of any revisions that we have. So if you could just kind of keep that outreach part sort of loosely in the group on when you might expect to have something ready to go to City Council, we could submit them together.
Yeah, my plan would certainly not be to do anything rogue. I would bring it all back together to this group, and broadly, I think if there's anything that's terribly contentious, we wouldn't put it in together. But if there's anything that this whole group unanimously thinks is a good idea, then I feel like that's pretty powerful to inform and ask for the city council.
Right, understood. Yeah, and I was thinking more along the lines of just timing. Like if we had some sort of timing, you know, if we wanted to get it done in the next month, 2 months, I mean, springtime, just, you know, sort of like a deadline in my own mind about coordinating that effort. To be sure that we can get our part done too in a timely way so that we can get this submitted.
I think April
as soon as
would be a
possible.
lovely month to put something out. So basically,
Okay,
next month
that
is going
sounds great.
next month we're probably going to have a bunch of conversation about civic infrastructure and stormwater. But then in March, maybe we can plan to have a solid conversation around tree preservation with the hope of in April having a final version that we could vote on and then send it off.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris.
That's what I got. Thank you,
okay.
Tori.
Next item on the agenda, as I find the agenda, Somerville's most wanted weeds.
Yeah, that's my item, and I've totally dropped the ball on that over the last few months. So I need to get back on that and hit a little bit of momentum early in the summer, and then I've got busy with classes and it fell apart. So I need to come back on that and work on getting an updated draft to bring to the committee. So I'll try to email the folks who are working on that before over the next month and try to have something to talk about next time.
Thanks, Amy, for doing this, and let me know, send that to me, and we need someone to help out.
I can't hear you, Tori. Is it just me?
No, I can't hear her either.
I'm muted. Sorry. So regreening the green line. Do we have anything, any updates there?
I don't have anything. I did reach out to Viola, but did not hear back. So I don't know if anyone else has heard anything, but I have nothing.
So what I would like to do on this is I want to take about 5 or 6 minutes. I want to put together a document like we did for the horticulturalist. I want to ask some questions that we can get some, you know, something pointed that we can ask for from Viola. And like, for example, like what is the seed mix that is being used? Is there a way we can just like get a meeting with Viola, like a few of us, to have a better understanding of what the plan is? And because I know there's a period where like I don't even know what the work that has been done, and it looks like there are things growing, and Wig Zamor has taken pictures of butterflies and birds, and it looks to me like Scotch thistle, but yep, they do seem to like it. It's invasive, but then it was all like cut down. So
Could I ask, actually, Tori, so I think this is why we're so popular this evening, because there was a note that went around the Green and Open list about this being on the agenda. And I don't even know, at a high level, there's all these moving parts of like property ownership and construction control. And there's the community path extension, and there's green space, and there's GLX. I would ask Wig, I know that you are involved with some ridership committee of the T. Do you know where we are on the process of those various pieces of property being handed off from the construction project to the state or the city for just when we would have an opportunity to do something? And as I said his name, he went off camera.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is complicated because there are multiple rail lines in the same corridor. I do think that the project has not been handed over yet to its final destination with regard to how much jurisdiction the T versus the commuter rail lines versus Amtrak versus the city of Somerville. But I do expect that will happen pretty soon. I think the playing fields behind the high school, and that project is really the one that's kind of the last one that will be in a position to kind of open up the path network. And at that point, I think GLX will also be signed off. And I do expect that this will evolve. Sorry about that. Let me just get rid of this, whatever it is. So I would urge that you guys and some of the rest of us keep our eyes on this each month in the next year, because I do expect a fair amount of transition. I also expect that although the rail lines really hate big trees, I think other than that, they're likely not to exercise as much responsibility as there should be toward the greening of this corridor. Some of it's going to be very narrow, but some of it is wider, some of it's in slope. I think it's actually pretty interesting at urban scale to pay attention to this in the intermediate and longer term. And yeah, I have sat on the MBTA Rider Oversight Committee for 20 years, which is a state agency. It's mostly transit enthusiasts, though. It's not. I also sit on the Massport CAC, which is another state agency that has real paid staff and real funding. The MBTA Rider Oversight Committee does not have. We have some staff support from the T and from the Boston region MPO, CTPS staff at the MPO. But I think, so let me just stop there and see if you have any questions that you think I can answer. I don't think I can answer too much, but I think this is going to be important for Somerville to have increased friendly control over in the next year and in the next decade.
Let me ask just specifically, one potential vision, which we are not living, but one potential vision that you could imagine is that the rail corridor is a greenway and a connective part
Yes.
through our various communities. That would have been amazing to have this as a connected environmental serving corridor from downtown Boston all the way up.
Yeah, I agree with that, and obviously you guys all know, and mostly women, all know that these corridors are important for green things that grow. They're important for pollinators. They're important for various bird species. They're important for lots of different reasons. Corridors are kind of unique as opposed to spots, and you know, so I would encourage you to think about it in that regard. I also have mentioned, perhaps just to Tori, you know, the woman who, Amber Christopherson, who did the Mystic River Path networks. She's a graduate of Tufts. She has just been moved to be in charge of all paths in the state. I think it might be worth you talking to her, having her as a guest at some point, because of her experience. She did a great job in the Mystic. You know, just one person adding quite a few paths, not necessarily on our side of the river, but quite a few paths in the Mystic area. Amber is responsible for. We've got the Lynn, the Northern Strand coming down from Lynn. That's going to be an important regional connector for equity and other reasons. So I think it might be worth your talking with her and others who work on paths. The Boston MPO does fund paths as well as transit and roadways. They are the regional entity charged with federal conformity, and they generally meet for half a day, 2 times a month. Tom Bent has tended to represent the city of Somerville and or Brad Rawson on that committee. I went to 10 years of those meetings when Somerville wasn't paying attention because I wanted to get the Green Line enabled. But once that happened and once the city was going, I have kind of backed off from that as one of the things I do just routinely as a volunteer.
Yeah, where I was going to go was, do we have a feel for the length of the GLX through Somerville? Because we're a Somerville committee. I recall, I think it was years ago, I believe we met in person, which puts it before 2020. You had maps, perhaps, of the various widths that we had to work with and the spaces we had to work with. I feel like that would be a great place to restart this conversation. To just understanding what kind of space we're dealing with, because we can't have a connected path all the way through. It's not wide enough in some spots. Would you be willing to share some of that prior work just to bring?
I can dig some of that out, and I also have. I just recently shared the MBTA tree oversight, but in the past, I think I had shared with Tori at least. There are necessary routine reviews of every rail corridor with regard to tree growth, and they tend to vary depending on the municipalities they're in and also the rail that has the most jurisdiction. But those, you know, those are federally required reviews because of the rail corridors, and that's where, you know, that's where people get really concerned about overhanging big trees. All of the Olmsted parks and paths are grandfathered. So if you go to look at Longwood, for example, and the Olmsted parks coming back toward Boston and Fenway from there, they have massive trees right next to the tracks. The T deals with it. Yet they do have big branches fall down, and they do have to send crews out. But because they are grandfathered due to the Olmsted parks and the Elliott parks, they have trees, you know, that are 150 feet high, 5-10 feet from the tracks, and they deal with it. Other places that aren't so grandfathered don't generally have those rights to grow trees, as opposed to the rails controlling the tree growth. But I think all of it is really important. And keep in mind, the path will go all the way to Tufts, you know, and it will branch, you know, it will keep the branch to Davis. So that is continuous.
So I guess, I mean, one thing I would like to do moving forward, I'd like to be able to talk to Viola directly. If she can't make it to these meetings, I want someone, one of my committee members, to join me, and I'm going to ask like Lynn Wiseman from Friends of the Community Path, just to have an update, because we haven't had an update in a long time, and if Viola can't come, maybe we can make some time to meet with her, just so we just know what's happening and we can figure out our next moves. And the Pollinator Action Committee, I imagine, you know, one of the toolkits that might come out of that is the planting plan for what you plant on the GLX corridor.
Yeah.
That is a planting set. I personally, I have my ideas, and so I'd like for that to happen. So does that make sense to members on this committee?
Yes.
And Vanessa, does that make sense? Yep.
I'm
Can I
happy
just
to.
can I
Go
just
for
throw
it.
one other thing in there? The Boston MPO is usually the funder of path upgrades and path work. And compared to highways or new transit, paths are really cheap. But you might want somebody to come from the Central Transportation Planning staff and present to you the path projects that have been funded in the last decade or so by the Boston MPO in Eastern Massachusetts.
Okay, that's something to consider.
So,
Go ahead.
sorry, just to answer your previous question, I'm happy to invite Viola to come to a meeting. Again, I didn't have much time to reach out to her, so, you know, I can send another follow-up email, you know, tomorrow or something with some more time to plan. If she can't come to the next meeting, at least she could provide, I can get an update from her to get information.
Or I can just talk to her, or one of myself and another person from this committee can talk to her. That's one less thing for you to do. And you know, I'm really want to be able in our new year to be able just to have kind of casual, to have conversations with city staff. And so it's not all having to, you know, be funneled through you. Or, I mean, I love Viola. She's someone I would love to have a conversation with. And, you know, I can, if I reach out to her and she doesn't have time, I'm not going to put anything on her, but that's just a goal of mine, is to try to just have more conversation with city staff as we try to work together to get the things we want to accomplish. And okay, it's 6:28.
If I could just add one last thing, seats on the Boston MPO are very rare. There are only 3 of them for our part of the region. And Somerville's seat on the Boston MPO is a very powerful position. But once that is lost, you will not have the ability to so easily introduce funding for things like paths in Somerville. So somebody needs to get up to speed on that. I've never seen Viola or anybody from except Tom Bent, Mayor Curtatone, and Brad Rawson at those Boston MPO meetings. I went to 250 of them to get the Green Line on track.
Greg, are they open meetings?
Yeah, they're all open meetings. There's public comment at the beginning of them. They're nominally 2-hour meetings, but by the time you get there and come back and they run over, it's really about a half, you know, it's really about a half-day commitment. But I really think you need to get up to speed on the city and the Boston MPO if you're interested in path upgrades, because that is your funding mechanism. And Amber's pretty familiar with those as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Greg. So who would like to be a partner on this with me?
I can take a look. I can, well, I'm sort of going on to the administrative process, but I'm happy to help with it. And the reason that I went down the road of who's in control is I'm not even convinced that it's in a place where it can be a project for the city yet. Like, I'm open to the idea that actually nobody's working on it and there's not a planting list because it's not ours and we don't know what the land we would have to work with is. Like, and if that's where we are, then that can be a really short update. Right?
Yeah.
And then to make a suggestion, we can go up and talk to the state level powers about moving that along. So, but I'm happy to partner with you on this.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and just MPOs are regional. The Boston MPO is uniquely powerful in Massachusetts, but it's basically Boston and 100 cities and towns that surround Boston. And they do all of the surface transportation analysis and funding, including rail, road, and path.
Okay, it sounds like an important thing to pay attention to. It's on my radar, Wig, and I always appreciate your institutional knowledge. Okay, I'd like to move on to the next agenda item unless anyone else has any thoughts, and that is the approval of minutes from previous meetings. And I would like to, for the next meeting, Renee wanted some information on where for the native planting ordinance, where the sunset clause for the neonicotinoids are, and if we are hopefully no longer taking plants with neonicotinoids. If you have a quick answer on that, Vanessa, I'd love to hear it. If not, we can wait, we can address it at the next meeting.
I have a quick answer. The sunset
Yay.
clause in the ordinance, I believe, says 2026. We don't source, it's hard to get information about whether neonicotinoids are ever used on any plant that we buy. So we don't have information about the plants that we get. We never use neonicotinoids in the city. We don't really know what happens to the plants before they get here.
This would be an example of something that could go in an RFP for all our contractor, for whenever we're having an installation happen, like just no neonicotinoids. And that would, you know, then be on the contractor to make sure that they're not sourcing from a place that has neonicotinoids, you know, but then like.
I believe growers don't have to say whether or not they do. There was some state update, but it's not for the type of places that we buy source plants from. So I'm not sure there is any mechanism to require or even ask and get correct information of a supplier or a grower if they use them. So
Because
maybe
there's
this is a longer conversation than I thought. So we have very little power as one small city in Massachusetts trying to buy trees from or other plants from the world. So
right, but our power in setting the example is absolutely huge.
Well, we can't change the industry as a whole. We just don't
Yes, we
have.
can. I'm only saying, just let's not doubt our power in setting policy for other cities to adopt. You know what I'm saying? Moving on to the next item, approval of minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Can I get a motion to approve them?
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay, just Chris, 1 second. All in favor of approving the minutes from December 15th, 2022? Vanessa,
Aye.
Jennifer,
Approve.
Amy Myrtle,
Approved.
Chris Dwan,
Approve.
Leah,
Approve.
who else is here? Murphy,
Approve.
is Malik still here? Tori, approve. Meeting minutes have been approved. And with that, I would like to adjourn the meeting, only 5 minutes late, and say thank you to all participants who came. And we look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Good night, everybody. See you next
Thank
time.
you.
Yep.